Ethan was the love of my life, the man I had saved myself for, my first kiss, my first I love you, my first and only dream of forever. And for years I believed he would also be my first night. But life doesn't always keep promises. Sometimes it tears them apart, rips them open, and leaves you bleeding in ways that no one can see. One night, one cruel, stolen night, his father-in-law took everything. I still remember the scent. Cigarette smoke laced with expensive cologne. The sharp bite of whiskey on his breath. The way the air seemed heavier when he walked in, as if the room itself bowed to him. His name was Damien Cross, Ethan's father-in-law. The kind of man who didn't just walk into a room, he owned it. He was in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that had seen wars most of us didn't even know existed. I never wanted to be alone with him. I didn't even like looking at him. But that night, I didn't get a choice. The rain was coming down hard outside. The house was too quiet. Ethan had left hours ago, promising he'd be back. And then Damien appeared, his shadow stretching across the doorway like it was reaching for me. The details are burned into my skin, the kind you can't wash off. His voice was low, almost gentle, but every word dripped with possession. "This was never his to begin with," he whispered. And then he took what I had always kept for Ethan. I told myself I would never forgive him. Not for the violation, not for the betrayal, and not for the way my body, against my will, remembered every second. Because now, every time I closed my eyes, I saw two faces. The boy I loved, and the man who ruined him for me. If you're still watching this, tell me in the comments, what would you do if the man you loved? Like this story if you're already hooked, share it so more people can feel the ache, and drop your answer in the comments. I'm reading all of them. Welcome to MG's Love Stories, where passion burns, hearts break, and you can't stop watching. Don't just listen, feel it. Like this story, share, subscribe, and let's dive in. 3 years earlier, Ethan Carter was sunlight, messy brown hair that always fell into his eyes. That crooked, boyish smile that could disarm even the coldest heart. He was the safe place I didn't know I needed. We met at a volunteer camp the summer I turned 19. I was there to escape my home. He was there because, in his words, I looked good holding babies and hammering nails. I wasn't supposed to fall for him. He wasn't supposed to be anything more than a distraction. But by the end of that summer, I knew he was everything. We shared our first kiss under a broken porch light. He brushed his thumb against my jaw, leaned in slow, and whispered, "Someday, I'm going to marry you." I laughed. "You barely know me." "I know enough," he said. "You're mine, Mia." Back then, I thought those words were forever. When we finally decided to take that next step, to make love, I wanted it to be perfect. Candles, music, his hands tracing my skin like I was made of glass. But that night never came. Because before it could, Damien happened. For years later, it's strange how pain changes you. Once, I was the girl who believed in fairy tales. Now, I'm the woman who doesn't even believe in happy endings. I thought I'd never see Ethan again. But fate is cruel. This morning, I walked into the marble lobby of Cross International, the company I'd just been hired at, and there he was, Ethan, in a perfectly tailored suit, his gaze catching mine across the room like no time had passed. His expression was unreadable. Shock, anger, relief. All I knew was my heart remembered him instantly. My body, too. And then, behind him, the elevator doors slid open, and Damien stepped out. Ethan's eyes flickered, a storm brewing. Damien's lips curved into the faintest smile, like he knew exactly what I was thinking. I felt the ground shift beneath me. This wasn't just a job. This was a battlefield, and I was caught between the man I loved and the man I swore I'd destroy. Damien's smile was the kind that made your pulse quicken, not out of attraction, but survival. It was the same look a predator gave before deciding whether you were worth the chase. "Miss Rivera," he said smoothly, as if 4 years ago had been nothing more than a polite handshake. "Welcome to Cross International." I forced my voice to stay level. "Mr. Cross. Not Damien. Not sir. Not anything personal." His eyes scanned my face, pausing at my mouth just long enough for my stomach to knot. Then, casually, he shifted his gaze to Ethan. "Son," he said. Ethan didn't answer immediately. His jaw was tight, his hands in his pockets. I noticed his knuckles flex. "I didn't know you were hiring," he said finally, his tone clipped. "I don't tell you everything," Damien replied. "It's better that way." Better for who? The HR manager, oblivious to the silent war in the air, ushered me toward the elevator. I could feel both pairs of eyes on my back, one burning with something I didn't want to name, the other with an ache I thought I'd buried. By lunchtime, the whispers had already started. Employees glanced at me like I was some kind of puzzle they couldn't solve. Who's the new girl? Why is she sitting in the corner office next to the CEO? The answer was simple. Damien had put me there. I was reviewing a file when I heard it. A low, steady voice at my door. "We need to talk." I didn't have to look up to know it was Ethan. His scent, cedar and something darker, filled the room before he stepped in. I swallowed hard. "Shouldn't you be in your own office?" He ignored the jab, closing the door behind him. "Why are you here, Mia?" I kept my eyes on the papers in front of me. "I work here." "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Pretend this is just a job." His voice had that sharp edge I remembered from our last fight. The night I'd walked away without explaining why. I thought it would protect him. Now I wasn't sure who I'd been protecting. "You don't belong here," he said. "That's not your decision." "You think I don't know what he's doing?" That made me look up. "And what exactly is he doing?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Marking you, claiming you. He's done it before and he'll do it again." Stop, I snapped. The word came out harder than I intended, because part of me hated hearing the truth out loud, and part of me remembered the heat of that night in ways I wished I could forget. Ethan stepped closer, his eyes searching mine. "Mia, if you stay here, you're walking straight into his game." "And if I leave?" I asked. "Then maybe I can protect you." I laughed bitterly. "You had your chance, Ethan. 4 years ago. You weren't there." His expression flickered. Pain, guilt, maybe both. "I didn't know. You didn't ask." The silence that followed was suffocating. Suddenly, the door opened. Damien walked in without knocking, his gaze sweeping over the scene. Ethan too close, me bristling. "Am I interrupting?" His voice was pure silk. Ethan straightened. "We're done here." "No," Damien said, his eyes on me. "We're just getting started." The tension between them was electric. Father-in-law, son-in-law, and me, the fracture line between them. Damien moved toward my desk, placing a file in front of me. "I need you to attend tonight's charity gala. You'll be on my arm." I blinked. "Excuse me?" He smiled faintly. "It's part of your role. You'll find the dress inside the garment bag in your office closet. 7 p.m. sharp." Ethan's fists clenched. "She's not your..." Damien's voice dropped. "Careful, Ethan." The room went still. I realized, with a cold shiver, that this wasn't just about me. This was about power, territory. When Damien left, Ethan turned to me, his voice low and urgent. "Don't go tonight." "I don't take orders from you," I said, even though my pulse was racing. "Mia, I'll survive." I cut in. "I always do." But deep down, I wasn't sure I believed it. That night, the dress waiting in my office was nothing short of a weapon. Deep crimson silk, cut low in the front, slit high at the thigh. The kind of dress that said I am here, and I am untouchable. Except I wasn't. When Damien offered his arm at the gala, I took it because this was my plan now. Get close enough to learn his weaknesses. Get close enough to destroy him. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and polished marble floors. Camera flashes popped. Every time Damien leaned down to speak to me, I could feel Ethan's gaze from across the room. "Smile," Damien murmured. "Everyone's watching." "I'm not here to make you look good," I replied. "On the contrary," he said, his fingers brushing mine. "You make me look very good." Halfway through the night, Ethan cornered me near the balcony. "This isn't you," he said, eyes burning. You don't know me anymore. I know you hate him. And yet here I am, I whispered. He stared at me for a long moment. Tell me what you're doing, Mia. Surviving, I said simply before walking away. Inside, Damien was watching, always watching. And when I met his gaze, I realized something chilling. He wanted Ethan to see. If you were in Mia's shoes right now, caught between revenge and temptation, what would you choose? Tell me in the comments. If this scene just gave you goosebumps, hit like, share it with your best friend who loves messy love stories, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The rest of the night was a blur of champagne and whispered threats disguised as compliments. By the time Damien dropped me off at my apartment, I was exhausted, but not from the gala. From the constant push and pull of being trapped between two men who could ruin me in different ways. As I stepped out of the car, Damien leaned in just enough for his breath to ghost my ear. You're in my world now, Mia. And in my world, you don't get to walk away. I didn't answer, because I knew he was right for now. I didn't sleep that night. Damien's words kept looping in my head. Not because I believed him, but because part of me knew he was right. I had stepped into his world. And in his world, every choice came with a price tag I wasn't sure I could pay. The next morning, I found a small black box waiting on my desk. No note, no signature. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a diamond bracelet. Delicate, dazzling, cold. The kind of gift that didn't just say I own you. It screamed it. Before I could shove it back in the box, a voice behind me drawled, "You should wear it. It suits you." I turned. Damien leaned in the doorway, hands in his pockets, gaze steady. "I'm not your property," I said. His lips curved slightly. "And yet here you are, working for me, attending my events, wearing my dress." His eyes flicked to the box. "And soon my bracelet. You think money buys everything?" "No," he said softly. "But power does." I hated that his presence filled the room in a way Ethan's never had. Not because it was better, but because it was heavier. He didn't just exist near you. He surrounded you. I snapped the lid shut. "I don't want it." Damien's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "It's not a request." The day dragged. I kept my focus on work, avoiding Ethan's eyes every time he passed by my office. But avoidance is a fragile shield, and mine shattered when my phone buzzed with a text. From unknown number. "Wear the bracelet tonight." That evening, the office felt different, quieter. As I left, Ethan caught up to me in the lobby. "You've been avoiding me," he said. "I've been working. You've been pretending." He stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "Mia, I don't care what game he's playing. Don't let him win." I stared at him. "And what does winning look like to you, Ethan?" "Running back to the boy who didn't save me." That hit its mark. I saw it in the way his jaw tightened, the way his shoulders drew back. But he didn't move. "Maybe I didn't save you then," he said, "but I can now." Before I could reply, Damien's black town car pulled up to the curb. The rear window rolled down. "Get in," Damien said. Ethan's gaze hardened. "You don't have to go." I looked between them, the man I once loved, and the man I hated enough to get close to. Then I opened the car door and slid inside. The drive was silent until Damien spoke. "You're spending too much time with Ethan." I laughed bitterly. "You mean your son-in-law?" "My former son-in-law." "Don't flatter yourself. You're not the first thing we've fought over." That stung, even though I told myself it shouldn't. He took me to a private club, low lights, velvet walls, and an atmosphere thick with money and danger. The kind of place where people made deals that ruined lives. As we entered, whispers rippled through the crowd. Damien thrived on it. At our table, he poured me a drink, his eyes never leaving mine. "You're here because I want people to see you with me. It sends a message." "To who?" I asked. "To everyone who matters," he said. "And to Ethan." Somewhere between my second drink and his third, he leaned closer. "You could stop pretending," he murmured. "Pretending what?" "That you don't feel it." My pulse jumped. "Feel what?" "This," he said, his fingers brushing mine. A touch so subtle, so deliberate, It felt like a dare. I pulled my hand back. You're delusional. Am I? Later, when we left the club, the night air was cool against my flushed skin. Damien walked me to the car, his hand resting at the small of my back like he owned the right. And then, headlights flared across the street. Ethan's car. He stepped out, his eyes locked on Damien's hand before flicking to my face. What the hell is this? Ethan demanded. Damien's voice was low and mocking. Jealousy doesn't suit you, son. Ethan ignored him. Mia, get in my car. I shook my head slowly. No. Damien's smirk deepened. Good girl. The tension between them was a live wire, and I realized Damien was enjoying this. Not just the control over me, but the way it drove Ethan mad. The next day at work, Ethan cornered me again. He's using you, he said. I'm using him, I replied. Ethan's eyes narrowed. For what? Revenge. That made him freeze. For what happened that night? Yes. His voice was rough. Then let me help you. Help me? I laughed without humor. You can't even face him without losing control. Maybe not, he admitted. But together we could. The door opened. Damien stood there holding a folder. Am I interrupting? Yes, Ethan snapped. Good, Damien said, stepping inside. He placed the folder on my desk. Our next project. High stakes. You'll be working with me exclusively. Ethan's glare could have cut glass. Why her? Because she's competent, Damien said smoothly. And because I want her close. When Damien left, Ethan turned back to me. He's not going to stop, Mia. And the closer you get, the more dangerous it gets. I met his gaze. That's the point. That night, working late with Damien, the tension was a constant hum. At one point, he moved behind me, leaning over to look at the documents I was typing. His breath brushed my neck. You're getting good at this, he murmured. At what? Walking the line between hate and want. I turned in my chair, looking up at him. You think I want you? He smiled faintly. I know you do. I stood abruptly, putting space between us. You don't know me. Oh, I know enough, he said. Enough to know that the longer you stay, the harder it will be to leave. If you were Mia right now, would you pull back? Or get closer to finish the game? Tell me in the comments. I'm curious to see how many of you would survive this. If this tension has you on edge, hit like, share it with your friends who live for dangerous love stories, and subscribe so you're here when the next line is crossed. When I finally left the office that night, my head was spinning. I told myself I was in control, that this was all part of the plan. But plans have a way of turning into something else. And as I slid the diamond bracelet onto my wrist before bed, I couldn't tell if I was wearing it for Damien or for myself. The storm didn't start with shouting. It started with silence. The kind of silence that pressed against your skin, making it hard to breathe. 2 weeks had passed since Damien gave me the bracelet. 2 weeks of late nights, whispered remarks, and calculated touches that skirted the edge of too much. 2 weeks of Ethan trying and failing to get me to quit. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could keep my head above water. I was wrong. It happened on a Thursday. I had just wrapped up a meeting when I heard raised voices coming from Damien's office. I froze outside the door. You crossed the line, Ethan was saying, his tone lethal. Which line was that? Damien replied, calm as ever. The one where she was yours? Because I'm afraid that was never true. My stomach twisted. Ethan's voice dropped. Raw. You did it to spite me. You couldn't take what I had, so you took her. Damien chuckled. Oh, Ethan. You still think this is about you. Before I could move, the door swung open. Damien stood there, his expression smooth, but his eyes glinted like he'd just won something. Mia, he said, come in. Ethan's gaze snapped to mine. 1,000 unspoken questions in those eyes, but beneath them something else. Something that looked dangerously like hurt. I stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind me. Damien leaned against his desk. Ethan seems to think you're still his. I'm not anyone's, I said sharply. Exactly, Damien said, as if I'd proven his point. which is why you're free to choose who you stand beside. I narrowed my eyes. This isn't about choice. It's about control. He smiled faintly. Control is just another word for protection. I wanted to throw the bracelet in his face. I wanted to tell him that protection meant nothing when it came wrapped in chains. But before I could, Damien's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression shifting almost imperceptibly. Then he looked at me. Go home early tonight. That alone should have been a warning. But it wasn't until hours later, lying in bed, unable to sleep, that my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. You should see this. Attached was a photo. It was me, at the gala, Damien's hand low on my back, his mouth close to my ear, and beside it another photo, Damien handing a thick envelope to a man I didn't recognize. The caption read, "Ask him what it cost." The next morning, I marched straight into Damien's office. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, shoving my phone onto his desk. He barely glanced at it. "A deal. A deal." My voice cracked. "What kind of deal involves me?" "The kind that keeps you alive," he said evenly. I stared at him. "You sold me." "No," he said, stepping closer. "I bought you. You think you were safe before I stepped in? You weren't. That night, 4 years ago, it wasn't random. It was a message. You were a pawn in someone else's war. I took you out of their reach. You just never realized it." His words hit like a slap. The betrayal wasn't just that he'd touched me, claimed me, played his power games. It was that he'd known all along what I didn't, that my life had been collateral in something far bigger. "Who?" I asked, my throat tight. His gaze darkened. "You don't want to know." I spun toward the door, but it flew open before I could reach it. Ethan stood there, his expression unreadable. "Is it true?" he asked Damien. "Depends," Damien replied. "What's it?" "That she was part of your deal," Ethan said. Damien's silence was answer enough. Ethan's jaw tightened. "You're worse than I thought." I stepped past Ethan, but he caught my arm. "Mia, don't," I said, pulling away. "Both of you have played with me like I'm some kind of prize. I'm done." I walked out without looking back. For the next 2 days, I ignored every call, every knock on my door. I needed space to think. But space didn't stop the images from playing on a loop in my mind. The night Damien took me, the look in Ethan's eyes when he realized the truth, the possibility that my entire life had been a game I never agreed to play. On the third night, I heard a knock. Not frantic, just steady. I opened the door to find Ethan standing there. Rain plastered his hair to his forehead. "I need you to hear me out," he said. I crossed my arms. "Why?" "Because I'm not here to save you," he said. "I'm here to help you burn it all down." I hesitated. "And why should I trust you now?" "Because," he said, stepping closer, "I know something you don't. Damien isn't the only one who made a deal that night. I did too." The words landed like a blade. "What?" Ethan's voice was rough. "He told me if I stayed out of it, you'd be safe. I thought I was protecting you, Mia. But all I did was give him room to take you. I didn't know whether to scream or cry, so I did neither. Instead, I asked, 'And what do you want now?' 'To take him down,' Ethan said. 'With you.' For a moment, I saw us as we'd been before, laughing under that broken porch light, promising each other forever. But that was a lifetime ago. Now, the only forever I wanted was the one where Damien Cross was nothing but a memory. I let Ethan in, and as the door shut behind him, I knew one thing for certain. The game had changed. He didn't let go of my wrist. If anything, his grip tightened, forcing me closer until my back hit the cool marble of the kitchen counter. "Why are you here, Ava?" His voice was a low, dangerous growl. "Really here? Not the pretty little excuse you rehearsed in your head." My pulse hammered in my ears. I tried to push past him, but he caged me in with his body, towering, relentless, a storm I couldn't outrun. "You wouldn't understand," I said, my voice trembling, betraying me. "Try me." His nearness was intoxicating, his scent, that faint hint of expensive whiskey and danger. It was so wrong to notice it, but my body betrayed me the same way it had that night. I tilted my chin up, meeting his eyes. Ethan owes me everything, but he's too much of a coward to fight for me. And you, my voice cracked. You took what wasn't yours. The silence between us stretched until it felt like the room itself held its breath. Then, his thumb brushed the inside of my wrist, a barely there touch that sent shivers racing up my arm. Maybe I did, he admitted, unflinching. But you didn't stop me, Ava. My heart twisted. Don't you dare turn this on me. He leaned in so close his lips were a breath away from my ear. I'm not turning anything. I'm just wondering if you're as angry at me as you pretend, or if you're angry at yourself for wanting it. The air rushed out of my lungs. He'd cut right into the wound I'd been hiding. I hated him for it. I hated myself more. Let me go, I whispered, but he didn't. Instead, he stepped back just enough to study me like I was a puzzle only he could solve. I can make him pay, he said finally. Ethan, his entire family, everyone who thought they could use you and walk away. My gaze snapped to his. Why would you do that for me? A slow, dangerous smile curved his lips. Because destroying him will hurt me too. And I'm already halfway to hell. I might as well take you with me. The words were laced with something dark, but beneath it, there was truth. We were both broken by the same man. Different wounds, same blood on our hands. And in exchange? I asked. His smile deepened, but his eyes stayed cold. In exchange, you stop pretending you hate me as much as you do. I should have walked away. I should have said no. Instead, I heard my own voice, small, betraying me, ask, and if I agree? He stepped back, giving me room, but his gaze stayed locked on mine. Then you'll find out what it means to be mine. In every way that counts. Things are heating up. What would you do if you were Ava right now? Walk away or make the deal? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you're still hooked, don't forget to like and share so others can get lost in this story too. I should have said no. I should have walked out of that kitchen, out of his orbit, and never looked back. Instead, I heard the words slip from my lips like a confession I'd been holding in far too long. I'll do it. His expression didn't change. No smile, no smirk. Just that calculating stillness, as if he'd been expecting my surrender all along. Good, he said, stepping closer until the counter pressed into my spine again. Then you belong to me now. My stomach twisted. This isn't ownership. Everything is ownership, Ava. Love, loyalty, revenge. It's all just a matter of who holds the leash. I wanted to deny him, to tell him I wasn't anyone's possession. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about being owned. It was about power, and right now, his was the only kind that could burn Ethan's world to the ground. What do you want me to do? I asked. He leaned one palm on the counter beside me, lowering his voice until it was a dangerous whisper. First, you're going to move into the penthouse. No visits to Ethan. No calls. Let him feel the silence. Let him wonder where you are. And why. That's going to raise questions. That's the point. I swallowed hard. The idea of being in his space, his bed, his life was a fire I wasn't ready to stand in. But there was no backing down now. He straightened, finally giving me enough room to breathe. Pack a bag. I'll send a car tomorrow morning. And tonight? I asked, my voice betraying a tremor I didn't mean to show. His eyes dragged over me slowly, lingering just long enough to make my skin prickle. Tonight? You remember exactly who you're making this deal with. Before I could react, his hand came up, not to touch me, but to tilt my chin just enough so I had to meet his eyes. And Ava, once you're mine, there's no going back. The next morning, I stood in the marble lobby of his building, suitcase in hand, feeling like I just crossed into another world. The doorman greeted me by name. How he already knew it, I didn't want to ask. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. When the doors slid open, the first thing I noticed was the view. Floor-to-ceiling glass wrapping around the skyline. The city sprawled out like a kingdom under his reign. And then I saw him, standing by the window, suit jacket off, shirt sleeves rolled up, a glass of whiskey in one hand, watching me. "You came," he said simply, as if there was any chance I wouldn't. "I said I would." He set the glass down, closing the distance between us in unhurried, measured steps. "Then let's make this official." I stood frozen as he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. "A key." "Your key," he said, placing it in my palm. "To the apartment, to the office, to me." The metal was warm from his hand, heavier than it should have been. "This doesn't mean." "It means exactly what it means," he cut in, his voice low but firm. "From now on, Ava, your loyalty is here, with me." His gaze searched mine, as if waiting for a flicker of doubt. I didn't give him one, even if my heart was pounding so hard it hurt. "Good girl," he murmured. And just like that, the game began. Ava's officially crossed the line. Do you think she's in control? Or is she already playing his game? Comment your take. And hit that like so I know you're still hooked. The sun had barely set when I realized the penthouse wasn't quiet. It listened. Every click of my heels across the marble echoed back at me. Every rustle of fabric seemed too loud in the air. The place felt alive, not in a warm, welcoming way, but in the way of a predator that's aware of its prey. I dropped my suitcase in the guest room, or what I thought was the guest room. "There's no need for that," his voice called from behind me. I turned to find him leaning against the doorframe, black shirt unbuttoned just enough to hint at the ink along his collarbone. "No need for what?" "For pretending you're going to stay in here." My breath caught. "It's a two-bedroom." "I assumed." "You assumed wrong." His steps were slow, deliberate. "There's only one room that matters in this place. Ava. Mine." I clenched my jaw. "We had a deal. This isn't part of it." He stopped inches away, his scent wrapping around me like something designed to undo all my arguments. "You're under my roof. My rules." His voice dropped, almost a growl. "And rule number 1, you don't hide from me." I wanted to push him back, to tell him I wasn't some possession to be paraded around. But there was a pull in the way he said it, a dark gravity I couldn't name. "Fine," I said, brushing past him. "I'll stay in your room." "Doesn't mean anything." "It means everything," he murmured, just loud enough for me to hear as I walked away. Dinner was tense, not because of the food, steak perfectly seared, but because of the way he watched me over his glass of wine. "You eat like someone who's always waiting for the next move," he said casually. "Maybe I am." He smirked. "Then you're in the right place." After dinner, I escaped to the balcony, the city lights flickering beneath us. The air was cooler out here, but my mind was restless. That's when I felt him behind me, not touching, just there. "You should get used to the view," he said. "It's yours now." "It's yours," I corrected. He leaned in, close enough that his breath brushed my ear. "Everything that's mine becomes yours. But that works both ways, Ava." I turned to face him, heartbeat kicking up. "And what exactly do you think is mine?" His eyes lingered on my lips before meeting my gaze again. "That's what I plan to find out." That night, I lay in his bed, my side of it, as far from him as physically possible without falling off the edge. He didn't touch me, didn't speak, just lay there, breathing slow and steady, like a man perfectly content to wait until the prey comes to him. But sleep never came for me. Every shift he made, every quiet exhale, felt too close, too heavy. And then, somewhere past midnight, I heard it. His voice, low and rough in the dark. "Tell me something you've never told anyone." I froze. "Why?" "Because secrets are currency here, and I want to know how much you're worth." The silence stretched between us, and for a moment, I considered lying. But the truth slipped out before I could stop it. When I was 17, I thought I was in love. He left without saying goodbye. I swore I'd never let anyone have that power over me again. The bed shifted. I felt his hand brush my wrist. Barely there, almost accidental. "Then don't make the mistake of thinking I'll ever leave," he said, and there was something in his tone, danger wrapped in a promise, that made my chest tighten. Neither of us spoke again, but the space between us didn't feel so wide anymore. Do you think Ava's walls will hold? Or is she already falling without knowing it? Drop your prediction. The city lights sparkled beneath us like 1,000 secrets waiting to be exposed. But tonight, I wasn't watching the skyline. I was watching him. Damien's hand brushed mine as we stepped into the gala. His grip firm, possessive, a silent declaration to everyone in the room. Whispers followed us like shadows, the kind that said, "Look who's finally tamed the wild girl." I forced a smile, a mask I wore so often it almost felt like my real face. He caught my eye and smirked. "Relax, Ava. This is our stage now." I swallowed hard. "Our?" He nodded. "You and me. Together." Together felt like a loaded word, heavy with promise and danger. The crowd parted for us like the sea. Familiar faces nodded, eyes flickering between admiration and something darker. Envy, suspicion, fear. One man stepped forward, a rival Damien never acknowledged openly, but whose presence always threatened the fragile balance of power. "Damien," the man said, voice oily with false warmth. "And you must be the famous Ava." Damien's smile sharpened. "You know me well, Marcus." I held my breath. This was the moment where loyalty would be tested and masks might slip. Marcus's gaze flicked to me, a challenge in his eyes. "Aren't you a little young for this kind of game?" Damien's laugh was cold. "Age is irrelevant when the stakes are this high." He leaned in, voice low enough only I could hear. "Watch closely." What happened next was a show of dominance so subtle, so perfect, it was almost invisible. Damien didn't need to shout or threaten. A simple touch on my lower back, a quiet word whispered in my ear, and Marcus's smile faltered. I felt the shift in the room like a physical thing, power bending to Damien's will. Later, as the gala wound down, Damien pulled me aside. "You handled yourself well," he said, eyes glittering with approval. I shrugged, trying to seem indifferent. "You mean I didn't embarrass myself?" He grinned. "More than that. You sent a message. To Marcus. To everyone." But then he added, his voice dropping, "There will be consequences." My heart skipped. Consequences. Every move on this board risks something. You need to be ready for what's coming. I met his gaze steadily. I've never been more ready. Just then, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You played the game well tonight, but the next move is yours, and so is the cost." I looked up at Damien. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "This is only the beginning, Ava. The game's heating up and so are the stakes. What do you think the cost will be?" Comment below, hit like if you're hooked, and subscribe for the next part. You don't want to miss this. The city never sleeps. But tonight, it felt like the entire world was holding its breath. The confrontation was inevitable. Damien's empire, built on secrets and blood, was crumbling. And at its center stood me, the girl who refused to be a pawn any longer. The warehouse where it all came to a head was cold and dark, the kind of place where deals were made and broken. Ethan was there, his eyes dark, haunted, but fierce. Damien stood across from him, calm but lethal, like a coiled snake ready to strike. And I stood between them, the wild card neither expected. Damien's voice sliced through the silence. "You really think you can take me down? Without me, you're nothing." Ethan stepped forward. "Without me, you're finished." I met both their gazes, feeling a fire ignite inside me that no one could control. "I'm done being your prize," I said. "Your pawn. I'm here for my life, for my love, for my freedom." The tension exploded. Words turned to shouts, then to silence broken only by the distant wail of sirens. Somewhere in the chaos, I found strength I didn't know I had. I faced Damien. "Your empire ends tonight." Ethan moved to my side, his hand finding mine, steadying me. "No more secrets. No more lies." Damien's sneer faltered for a moment. Then he laughed. "You think this ends clean? It never does." But it did, because this time we were ready. Together, Ethan and I revealed Damien's darkest secrets. Proof of his crimes, his betrayals. The police came. The empire fell. In the aftermath, as the dust settled, I looked at Ethan. No longer just the boy I once loved, but the man who stood with me, scars and all. "We survived," he whispered. "Yes," I said, "and we're free." Freedom wasn't easy. It was messy, painful, but real. And in that messy realness, I found something stronger than revenge: hope. Thank you for joining me on this journey through love, betrayal, and power. If this story gripped you, hit that like button, share with your friends who love a good mafia romance, and subscribe so you never miss the next chapter of MG's love stories. What part hit you hardest? Drop your thoughts below. I want to hear your heart.